Lyanna's legs trembled, her muscles screamed. The baby in her left arm began to cry, a thin wail that cut through the mountain air like a blade. She stumbled forward, her bare feet sliding on loose pine needles, and caught herself against a thick tree trunk. Bark scraped her palm raw, blood welled in the scratches. The other two infants stirred in the makeshift sling across her chest, their small faces scrunched with hunger she couldn't satisfy. When had her milk dried up? Yesterday? The day before? Time had become meaningless since the palace gates had slammed shut behind her. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the crying infant, little Mira, with her shock of dark hair, so much like her own. "I'm so sorry, my loves." The forest pressed in around them. Ancient pines towered overhead, their branches blocking what little remained of the afternoon sun. Shadows stretched long and dark across the forest floor. Lyanna's vision blurred at the edges, black spots dancing across her sight. When had she last eaten? 2 days ago. 3. A handful of berries that had left her stomach cramping with emptiness. When had she last slept? She couldn't remember. Everything since the birth had become a haze of pain and terror, and endless, desperate running. Her knees buckled. The strength simply left her legs, and this time she couldn't catch herself. She hit the ground hard, rolling instinctively to protect the babies, even as pine needles bit into her back through the torn fabric of her dress. Above her, the canopy spun in lazy circles. Her heart hammered against her ribs, each beat taking tremendous effort. Mira's cries grew weaker. The sound broke something inside Lyanna's chest. The other two, sweet Elena and little Sophia, barely stirred now. Their breathing was too shallow, their skin too pale. This is how we die, she thought, and the clarity of it was almost peaceful. Here in the dirt, forgotten by everyone who ever claimed to love us. Heavy footsteps crunched through the underbrush. Lyanna's brief moment of peace shattered. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might burst. Bears roamed these mountains. Wolves. Bandits who would slit her throat for the torn slippers on her feet. Did it matter? She didn't have strength left to run, could barely lift her head. A man stepped into view above her, backlit by the fading sun filtering through the trees. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that caught the light. His eyes seemed to glow amber in the dim forest, reflecting light like an animal's. He knelt beside her without speaking. His gaze moved from her face to the babies in her arms, and she braced herself for disgust, for the inevitable disappointment that always followed when men looked at her daughters. "Please," she whispered. Her voice came out like sandpaper across stone. "Don't hurt them." The stranger's expression didn't harden. Instead, something in his face gentled. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement like she was a spooked deer. His fingers brushed Mira's cheek with impossible tenderness, and the baby's weak cries quieted. "3 girls," he said. Wonder colored his voice, not disgust, not disappointment. Wonder, like he was looking at something miraculous. Lyanna tried to push herself upright and failed. Her arms shook with the effort of holding her daughters. "I can pay you. When I get somewhere safe, I can—" "You're coming with me." He was already moving, sliding his arms beneath her with careful precision. He lifted her and all 3 babies like they weighed nothing, cradling them against his broad chest. The warmth of him seeped through her torn dress, and despite every instinct screaming not to trust a stranger, she found herself relaxing into his strength. His heartbeat was steady under her cheek, strong, alive. Her own pulse tried to match its rhythm. "I don't even know your name," she managed. "Kieran." His voice rumbled in his chest, a deep vibration that seemed to calm the babies. They settled against him with tiny sighs. "And you're safe now. All of you. I promise." She wanted to argue, to demand explanations, to insist she could take care of herself and her daughters, like she'd been trying to do for 3 endless days. Instead, exhaustion pulled her under like a dark tide, and for the first time since leaving the palace, she let herself stop fighting. When consciousness returned, it came slowly, warmth first, blessed, wonderful warmth seeping into her bones, then softness beneath her back, an actual bed, not cold ground or rough stone. The scent of pine and wood smoke filled her nostrils, undercut by something else, something that made her want to breathe deeper. Panic shot through her like lightning. She bolted upright, ignoring the way her head spun and her vision grayed at the edges. "My daughters, where are?" "Easy." Kieran appeared at her side as if he'd been waiting for her to wake. Lyanna slept peacefully in his arms, her little fist curled around one of his fingers. The baby's cheeks were pink and full, nothing like the hollow, starved look she'd worn in the forest. "They're all fed and clean. Mira and Sophia are right there." Lyanna looked where he pointed. Her other 2 daughters slept curled together in a woven basket by the stone fireplace, lined with wool softer than anything she'd owned even in the palace. They looked healthy, content, mate, alive. Her throat closed up. For a moment she couldn't speak around the gratitude and relief choking her. "How long was I asleep?" 2 days. Kieran settled Lyanna carefully into her arms. The baby stirred but didn't wake, making soft, contented sounds. "My pack has nursing mothers. We took care of them." "Trishaby, mate pack." The words sent ice through her veins, chasing away the grateful warmth. She'd heard stories about the mountain packs, about the wild men who lived beyond civilization's reach, more animal than human, about what they did to women who wandered into their territory. Kieran must have seen her face change. He backed away slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "You're under my protection," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "All of you. No one here will hurt you. I give you my word." "Why?" The question burst out of her before she could stop it. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done, what kind of person I am." "You're a mother protecting her children." His amber eyes held hers steadily, unwavering. "You were dying to keep them alive. That's all I need to know about what kind of person you are." Lyanna stared at him. In the royal court, she was a failure, worthless, a princess who couldn't fulfill her most basic duty to the crown. But this stranger looked at her like she was something precious, something worth saving. "I was cast out," she said quietly, the words scraping her throat raw. "Exiled for treason. The king wanted his son to secure the bloodline, and I gave him 3 daughters instead." 3 useless girls? Kieran's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "The king is a fool. You could be executed for saying that. Speaking against the crown is not here." He moved to the fire, stirring something in a hanging pot that smelled like heaven. Rich broth and herbs and things her empty stomach cramped for. "Here. My word is law, and I say, you and your daughters are welcome for as long as you want to stay." He ladled soup into a wooden bowl and brought it to her. Her hands shook as she lifted the spoon. When had they gotten so thin? But the broth was rich and warm and exactly what her starved body needed. She had to force herself to eat slowly, to not gulp it down like an animal. "What do you want in return?" she asked between careful sips. Kieran was quiet for a long moment. He stared into the fire, flames dancing across the sharp planes of his face. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "Nothing you're not willing to give." Something in his tone made her look up sharply. He was watching her with an intensity that should have frightened her. In the palace, men had looked at her like a broodmare, calculating her value in potential heirs. This was different. Deeper. It sent a strange flutter through her chest that had nothing to do with fear. "I should leave," she said, even as the words felt wrong in her mouth. "When I'm stronger, find somewhere else to go." "Where?" The question was gentle but pointed, cutting straight to the heart of her dilemma. The king's reach extends far beyond these mountains. His soldiers patrol the main roads, and winter's coming early this year. Where would you go that would be safe for them? Lyanna closed her eyes. He was right, of course. She had nowhere else to run, no allies, no resources, no plan beyond surviving one more day. She'd learned that lesson thoroughly during 3 days of stumbling through the wilderness. "Why are you helping us?" she whispered. "Really, people don't risk themselves for strangers, not without a reason." Kieran knelt beside the bed, bringing himself to her eye level. This close, she could see flecks of gold in his amber eyes, could smell that scent that made something deep in her chest hum with recognition. "Because the moment I saw you in that forest, something in me recognized something in you. Like calls to like, Lyanna." He knew her name. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She'd never told him, but somehow he knew exactly who she was. "How did you—" "Word travels fast in the mountains. A princess cast out for bearing daughters instead of sons." His voice carried an edge of barely contained anger. "The whole kingdom's talking about it. Half think the king was justified, half think he's lost his mind. And which half are you?" "I think any man who'd throw away 3 healthy children and the woman who bore them deserves to lose his crown." Elena stirred in Lyanna's arms, making soft baby sounds. Without thinking, Lyanna adjusted her hold, and the infant settled back into peaceful sleep. Such a small thing, but Kieran watched like she'd performed a miracle. "You're good with them," he said softly. "They're all I have left." The words came out more raw than she'd intended. "Everything else is gone. My title, my home, my family, everything. But they're mine. No one can take them from me." "No." His hand covered hers where it rested on Elena's back. His skin was warm, calloused from work she couldn't imagine. "Not anymore. You're not alone anymore." The next few days passed in a strange, dreamlike rhythm. Kieran brought her meals, real food, more than she'd eaten in months, even at the palace. He helped with the babies when she needed it, his large hands impossibly gentle as he changed them or held them so she could rest. He never lingered longer than necessary, but Lyanna found herself listening for his footsteps in the hall. When he smiled at something Elena did, grabbing his nose or making faces, her heart did peculiar things. Other pack members came by occasionally, women mostly, bringing clothes that actually fit and carved wooden toys for the girls. They were polite but distant, watching her with curious eyes that held more questions than answers. A woman named Sarah seemed to be in charge of the domestic side of things. She had graying hair and kind eyes, and she clucked over the babies like a grandmother. "They're thriving," she said one morning, as she watched Mira try to focus on a dangling piece of carved wood. "Growing stronger every day. The mountain air agrees with them." "They don't trust me," Lyanna said that evening as Kieran built up the fire against the cooling night. "Your people. I can see it in their faces." "They don't know you yet." He didn't deny it, which she appreciated. Lies would have been worse than honesty. "Trust takes time here. We've had bad experiences with outsiders before, and their alpha bringing home a strange woman with 3 babies doesn't help." Kieran's hand stilled on the log he was positioning. "Is that what's worrying you?" "What they think." Lyanna shifted Sophia to her other arm. All 3 girls seemed to grow stronger by the day, their cheeks filling out, their cries growing lustier, their eyes more alert. But they still wanted to be held constantly. Not that she minded. After almost losing them, she'd hold them forever if she could. "I've heard stories about pack politics. she said carefully, not wanting to offend but needing to understand. About challenges to leadership, about what happens to outsiders who become liabilities. What kind of stories? His voice had gone very quiet, and when she looked up, his eyes held a dangerous glint. That packs don't accept weakness, that anyone who can't contribute gets driven out or worse. That alphas who make poor choices don't stay alphas long. Kieran stood slowly. In the firelight, he looked larger somehow. More intimidating. The civilized man who'd been bringing her soup and helping with diapers faded, replaced by something wilder. For a moment, Lyanna glimpsed the predator beneath the gentle caretaker. "Do you think bringing you here was a poor choice?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with significance she didn't fully understand. "I think bringing home a useless princess with 3 infants and no practical skills might look like one to your people." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I think it might look like their alpha is thinking with something other than his head." "You're not useless." The words came out sharp, almost angry, his hands clenched at his sides. "Don't ever call yourself that again." "I can't fight, can't hunt, can't do anything useful except produce children, and apparently I can't even do that right." "Stop." He crossed the room in 2 quick strides, kneeling beside her chair. "Listen to me. You kept 3 infants alive for 3 days in the wilderness, with no food, no shelter, no help. You walked until your feet bled and kept walking. You'd rather die than let them come to harm. That's not useless. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen. Your pack doesn't see it that way. Some of them don't. Yet." His jaw set in stubborn lines. "But even if they never do, it doesn't matter. You're mine to protect now." Stucker's mine. The word sent heat spiraling through her in ways she didn't want to examine. She tried to push the feeling away, to remind herself that she barely knew this man, that she had no business wanting things she couldn't have. "I won't let you fight your own pack for me," she said. "I won't be the reason you lose everything you've built here." "That's not your choice to make." Their eyes met across the small space between them. The air felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning struck. Elena fussed in her arms, breaking the spell, but the tension remained humming between them. "She's hungry," Lyanna murmured, grateful for the distraction. "I'll get Sarah." Kieran moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the latch. "Lyanna, you're not useless. You're not alone. And you're not going anywhere. The sooner you accept that, the easier this gets for both of us." He left before she could respond, but his words echoed in the quiet room long after his footsteps faded down the hall. The confrontation came 3 days later, building like a summer storm. Lyanna was sitting by the window, watching Mira track dust motes dancing in the afternoon sun. The baby's eyes were getting stronger, more focused. She was starting to smile, real smiles that lit up her whole face. Raised voices drifted up from the courtyard below, harsh and urgent. Lyanna couldn't make out words, but the tone was unmistakably hostile, angry. The kind of anger that preceded violence. Sarah appeared in the doorway looking grim, her usually cheerful face drawn tight with worry. "What's happening?" Lyanna asked, though her stomach already knew. "Pack meeting." Sarah moved to gather up Elena and Sophia from their basket, her movements quick and efficient. "Emergency session. Best to keep the little ones quiet and out of sight." "It's about me, isn't it?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. She avoided Lyanna's eyes as she bundled the babies, checking their wrappings with unnecessary thoroughness. "They want me gone. Some of the younger males think the alpha is being influenced." Sarah's voice was carefully neutral, making decisions with his heart instead of his head, putting the pack at risk for a woman he barely knows. "They're not wrong. The admission tasted bitter. I am a risk. To all of you. They want to understand why you're here. Why he's protecting you when you bring nothing but trouble. Sarah's voice softened slightly. It's not personal, child. They just don't know you yet. Don't understand what he sees in you. Through the window, Lyanna could see pack members gathering in the stone courtyard. 30 or 40 people, men and women both, forming a rough circle. Kieran stood at the center, arms crossed, facing down a group of younger men who looked ready for a fight. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he held himself, like a man preparing for battle. I should go down there, Lyanna said, starting to rise. Absolutely not. Sarah's tone brooked no argument. She blocked the doorway with her body. Let the Alpha handle this. It's his pack to lead, his authority to maintain. You showing up would only make things worse. But watching Kieran face opposition because of her made Lyanna's stomach clench with guilt. She'd already destroyed one life by failing to meet expectations. She wouldn't destroy his too. The voices grew louder. Someone shouted something that made Kieran's posture go rigid, his hands clenching into fists. Then she heard him respond, his voice carrying clearly through the mountain air. She stays. She and her daughters are under my protection. Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me directly. The courtyard fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Lyanna's heart hammered against her ribs. He just put his leadership on the line for me, she whispered. I know. Sarah's voice was grim. That's what terrifies me. But before anyone could respond to Kieran's challenge, before the pack could decide whether to support their alpha or tear him down, the sound of approaching horses cut through the mountain air like thunder. Lyanna's blood turned to ice. She knew that sound. The rhythmic pounding of shod hooves on stone. The jingle of military tack. Through the trees at the edge of pack territory, she could see them now. 20 mounted soldiers in the crimson and gold of the Royal Guard. At their head rode Captain Marcus, the man who'd once sworn to protect her, and now came to drag her back to die. They found me. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. How did they find me? But even as she asked, she knew. Someone had talked. Someone had seen her collapse in the forest, had whispered about the Alpha's strange new charge. Word traveled fast in the mountains, Kieran had said, and royal gold traveled even faster. Kieran's voice carried up from the courtyard, sharp with command. Sarah, get Lyanna and the children to the safe room, now. I can't hide, Lyanna said, even as panic clawed at her chest with icy talons. If they're here, they won't leave without me, and if I don't go willingly, if they have to search for me. She didn't need to finish. They both knew what the Royal Guard did to those who harbored fugitives, what they'd do to every man, woman, and child in this pack if Lyanna forced them to hunt. The Alpha gave orders. The Alpha doesn't understand. Lyanna stood, something fierce and desperate rising in her chest. It felt like the moment in the forest when she'd chosen to keep walking rather than lie down and die. No more hiding. No more letting other people pay for my failures. She could hear the horses entering the courtyard now, iron shoes striking stone. Could hear Captain Marcus's voice booming across the open space, cold and official. By order of His Majesty King Aldrich, we demand the return of the traitor Princess Lyanna and her spawn, Koryashikal spawn. Her daughters weren't even people to them. Just evidence of her crime, burdens to be disposed of. Stay with the children, she told Sarah, her voice steady despite the terror threatening to choke her. Whatever happens, keep them safe. Promise me. Lyanna, no. But she was already moving, her bare feet silent on the stone stairs. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest, but she couldn't let Kieran face this alone. Couldn't let his pack suffer because she'd been too weak to keep running when she should have. She reached the main floor just as Kieran's voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. "There's no traitor here, only someone under my protection." Lyanna pressed herself against the door frame, watching through the gap. Kieran stood between the royal guard and his own pack, every line of his body radiating lethal calm. His people flanked him. Even the men who'd been arguing with him minutes before now stood united against the outside threat. Captain Marcus dismounted, his armor clanking with each movement. He was older than Lyanna remembered, gray threading through his dark beard, lines carved deep around his eyes. But those eyes held the same cold duty that had watched her flee the palace gates. "Stand aside, Wolf," Marcus said, his hand resting on his sword hilt. "The king's justice doesn't recognize your protection. The king's justice doesn't reach these mountains." Kieran's voice was deadly quiet, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "You're on my territory now, my laws, my rules. We'll burn your territory to ash if we have to." Marcus drew his sword, the steel singing as it cleared the sheath. "The princess dies today, by royal decree, her unnatural daughters with her." Something snapped inside Lyanna's chest. The fear didn't disappear, but it transformed into rage, white-hot and purifying. They wanted her daughters dead, simply for being born female. Wanted to murder 3 innocent babies because they couldn't carry on a bloodline that had brought nothing but misery to everyone it touched. She stepped into the courtyard. "Here I am." Every head turned toward her. Kieran spun around, his eyes flashing with fury and terror in equal measure. "Lyanna, get back inside, now." "No." She walked forward, her chin raised despite the tremor in her legs. Her bare feet found purchase on the cold stone. "I won't let you start a war over me, Kieran. I won't let your pack bleed for my mistakes." Captain Marcus smiled, cold and satisfied. "Princess, you've led us quite a chase through these god-forsaken mountains." "I'm not a princess anymore." The words came easier than she'd expected, carrying a truth that surprised her. "My father made that very clear when he had me thrown out like garbage. Cast out or not, you committed treason against the crown. You and your offspring." He spoke the word like it left a bad taste in his mouth. Kieran moved, fast as lightning, putting himself between Lyanna and the captain's raised sword. "Touch her and die." The promise in his voice was absolute. Lyanna felt it resonate in her bones, in the space between her heartbeats. Around the courtyard his pack shifted subtly, hands moving to weapons, bodies coiling for violence. "Kieran, stop!" Her voice cracked with desperation. "Please, this isn't your fight." He turned his head just enough to look at her, his eyes blazing gold in the afternoon light. "Like hell it isn't." The words hit her like a physical blow. The mate bond she'd been trying to ignore, trying to deny, flared to life between them. She could feel the depth of his fury, his desperation, his absolute refusal to let her go. "You feel it too," he said, so quietly only she could hear. "Stop pretending you don't." Captain Marcus laughed, the sound harsh and grating. "How touching. The big bad alpha, brought low by a barren princess who can't even produce a proper heir." "I'm not barren." Lyanna's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "I gave birth to 3 healthy, beautiful daughters. Perfect in every way. The fault isn't with me. It's with a system that sees half the population as worthless, simply for existing. Daughters are worthless for securing a bloodline. Everyone knows that. Then maybe the bloodline deserves to die." The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Marcus's face darkened with rage. "Enough of this treason. You'll come with us now, princess, or we'll take your head here and burn this place around your corpse. Starting with those brats upstairs. She's not going anywhere. Kieran's voice had dropped to something barely human. His pack pressed closer behind him, a wall of snarling, barely restrained fury. The air itself seemed to vibrate with contained violence, like the moment before an avalanche. 20 men against 50, Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. I don't like those odds, Wolf. For you? No. You really shouldn't. Lyanna felt the moment balance on a knife's edge. One wrong word, one sudden movement, and the courtyard would run red with blood. All because she'd been too selfish to keep running, too weak to face her fate alone. Wait, she stepped forward again, ignoring Kieran's warning growl. Captain Marcus! You served my mother faithfully for 20 years. Marcus's expression flickered, uncertainty replacing some of the cold duty. I did my duty to the crown. My mother was part of that crown. She would have wept to see her granddaughters murdered for the crime of being born female. Your mother understood duty, understood sacrifice. My mother understood love. Lyanna's voice shook, but she pressed on, sensing the crack in his armor. She would have chosen love over duty every time. You know that's true. You saw how she was with me, how gentle she was with everyone around her. For a moment, something almost like regret crossed the captain's weathered face. His sword wavered slightly. Then the duty reasserted itself, hardening his features again. Your mother is dead, has been for 5 years. The king's will is all that matters now. Then the king can come get me himself. The words left Lyanna's mouth before she could think them through, reckless and desperate. I formally renounce my claim to the throne. I renounce my titles, my bloodline, my right to inheritance. All of it. I'm nobody now, just a woman with 3 children seeking shelter. What possible threat am I to anyone? You carry royal blood. Blood that my father declared worthless. The words tore from her throat, carrying months of suppressed rage and pain. I'm nothing, remember? Just a failed vessel who couldn't produce the precious son he needed. Just a broken woman who disappointed the crown. Why waste 20 good soldiers and weeks of travel hunting nothing? Marcus hesitated. She could see the doubt creeping in, the questions about orders that had sent him days into dangerous territory to murder a woman and 3 helpless infants. Kieran stepped closer to her, his presence solid and warm at her back. She could feel his strength, his unwavering support, his readiness to fight the world for her if necessary. The princess is dead, he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard with absolute authority. She died in the forest 3 weeks ago, alone and forgotten. What you're looking at now is my mate, Luna of this pack, under my protection and the protection of our laws. The word mate sent shockwaves through both groups. Lyanna's breath caught as the bond between them suddenly blazed like a beacon, visible to everyone present. You can't just claim someone, Marcus started. I can claim my mate. Kieran's arm came around Lyanna's waist, pulling her against his side. His scent surrounded her, wild and clean and right. She accepted my protection. She's carrying my scent. She bears my mark. By every law that governs our kind, she's mine now. It was a lie about the mark, but it felt more true than anything Lyanna had ever known. Standing beside Kieran, feeling his absolute certainty, his willingness to face down an army for her, this was what she'd been running toward without knowing it. I choose this, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the stone courtyard. I choose him. I choose this pack. I choose to stay and build a life here. Marcus looked between them, his sword wavering. Around the courtyard, the pack members watched with fierce approval. These people she barely knew were ready to die for her, simply because their alpha had claimed her. The king will not be satisfied with empty words. The king will be satisfied with my death. Lyanna cut him off, her voice gaining strength. Fine. Princess Lyanna is dead. She died alone and unmourned in the wilderness, a cautionary tale about the price of disappointing the crown. But I'm not her anymore. She turned to face Kieran fully, her heart hammering against her ribs. The golden flecks in his eyes seemed to glow in the afternoon light. I accept your claim. I accept your protection. I choose you, Kieran. I choose this life. The words were barely out of her mouth before his lips claimed hers. The kiss was fierce, desperate, full of everything they'd been holding back. The mate bond exploded between them, washing away every doubt, every fear, every reason this couldn't work. His hands tangled in her hair. She could taste his relief, his joy, his absolute devotion. Around them, the world faded to nothing but this moment, this choice, this perfect rightness. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, the entire courtyard was staring. Kieran's pack looked stunned but pleased, pride and approval radiating from their faces. The royal guard looked uncertain, their formation wavering. There, Kieran said, his voice rough with emotion. It's done. She's my Luna now, marked and claimed before witnesses. You want her, you'll have to go through me and every wolf in these mountains. Captain Marcus stared at them for a long, tense moment. His sword remained raised, but his grip had loosened. Finally, slowly, he lowered the blade. Princess Lyanna died in the forest, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Alone and unmourned, as you said. The search ends here. He sheathed his sword with a decisive click, then remounted his horse. His men followed suit, though several cast uncertain glances back at the courtyard. But as they prepared to leave, Marcus looked down at Lyanna one more time. Something in his weathered face had softened. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly, meant for her ears alone. She always said you'd find your own way in the end. Then they were gone, hoofbeats fading into the distance until only mountain silence remained. Lyanna sagged against Kieran's side, adrenaline leaving her shaky and weak. Is it over? She whispered. It's over. His arms tightened around her, solid and reassuring. You're safe. You're home. Comb. The word settled into her chest, like a missing piece clicking into place. Around them, the pack began to disperse, conversations buzzing with excitement and speculation. But Lyanna only had eyes for Kieran. Did you mean it? She asked. About claiming me? About the mate bond? His golden eyes were soft, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. I meant every word. Have since the moment I found you in that forest. The question is, did you mean it when you chose me? She thought of her daughters upstairs, safe and loved, and growing stronger every day. Thought of Sarah's gentle hands and the pack's grudging acceptance that had turned to fierce protection the moment outsiders threatened one of their own. Thought of Kieran himself, strong, stubborn, willing to risk everything for people he cared about. I meant it, she said, surprise coloring her voice at how easily the truth came. I choose this. I choose you. I choose us. The ceremony happened at sunset 3 days later, when the moon would be full and bright overhead. Not the elaborate royal wedding Lyanna had been promised as a child, full of political alliances and cold duty. This was something older, deeper, something real and wild and hers. She wore a simple white dress that Sarah had somehow produced, the fabric soft and flowing. Her hair was crowned with wildflowers that Mira had helped gather during a walk through the mountain meadows, tiny blooms that smelled like sunshine and new beginnings. Kieran wore his best clothes but looked uncomfortable in them, tugging at the collar and shifting his weight. His eyes never left her face as she walked toward him across the courtyard where she'd made her choice. The whole pack gathered to witness, their faces warm with genuine happiness. These people who'd been strangers a week ago now felt like family, like the belonging she'd searched for her entire life without knowing it. Elder Thorne performed the ceremony, his weathered hands sure and steady as he bound their wrists with silk cords dyed in the colors of sunset. His voice carried the weight of ancient tradition as he spoke words that had joined mates for centuries. But Lyanna barely heard the formal phrases. She was lost in Kieran's eyes, in the feeling of the mate bond settling around them like a warm embrace, completing a connection that had been building since that first moment in the forest. Do you, Lyanna, formerly of House Aldrich, take this Alpha as your mate, your partner, your equal in all things? I do. The words came without hesitation, carrying the weight of absolute truth. Do you, Kieran, Alpha of the Mountain Pack, take this woman as your mate, your Luna, your equal in all things? I do. His voice was rough with barely contained emotion. Then, by the laws of our people and the bonds of your hearts, I pronounce you mated. What the moon has joined, let no earthly power separate. Kieran kissed her as the pack erupted in cheers and howls of celebration, and Lyanna felt her old life fall away completely. She was Luna now. Wife. Mother. Pretty home. When they broke apart, both breathless, she saw Sarah approaching with the girls. Elena and Sophia were awake, blinking curiously at the crowd with their wide, dark eyes. Mira was fast asleep in Sarah's other arm, completely unbothered by the celebration around her. They should meet their new father properly, Sarah said, her eyes bright with unshed tears of happiness. Kieran's face went soft as he looked at the babies, all the wild intensity fading into something tender and protective. May I? He asked, his voice uncertain for the first time since she'd known him. Lyanna nodded, her throat tight with emotion. She watched him take Elena first, his large hands impossibly gentle as he cradled her small body against his chest. Hello, little one, he murmured, his voice full of wonder. I'm going to take such good care of you, all of you. That's a promise. Elena yawned and grabbed his finger with her tiny fist, holding on with surprising strength. Kieran looked like he might cry from the simple perfection of it. She likes you, Lyanna said, her heart overflowing. Good thing, since I plan to spoil her rotten. He looked up at Lyanna, his eyes bright with unshed tears. All of them. They'll never want for anything. Love, protection, opportunities. Is that okay with you, Luna? Taya Luna. Her title, her role, her new identity. It fit like it had been made for her, like she'd been walking toward this moment her entire life. More than okay, she said, though they're going to be such trouble when they're older. 3 strong-willed daughters who know their father will give them anything they want. I'm counting on it. Kieran's smile was pure joy, bright as the rising moon. Strong daughters make strong packs. They'll be leaders someday, all 3 of them. Around them, the celebration continued, but Lyanna felt suspended in a bubble of perfect contentment. Her daughters were safe, loved, wanted. Her mate was holding them like they were the most precious things in the world. Her pack, and they were truly hers now, was celebrating their union with genuine happiness. She thought briefly of her father, alone in his cold palace, obsessing over bloodlines and heirs. The thought brought no pain now, only pity. He'd thrown away everything that mattered, chasing something that never would have brought him joy. No regrets? Kieran asked quietly, as if reading her thoughts. Lyanna looked at her daughters, at her new pack, at the man who'd risked everything to keep them all safe, at the mountains that would shelter them, and the territory that was theirs to protect and nurture. None, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. As the full moon rose over the mountain peaks, painting everything in silver light, Lyanna felt the last of her old fears fade away. She was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the people who mattered. Princess Lyanna was dead, buried in a forest grave of shame and disappointment. Lyanna had everything she'd ever dreamed of, and more than she'd dared to hope for. Under the moonlight, Kieran drew her close. She breathed in his scent, wild and clean and home. She had chosen him, chosen this life, chosen love over duty. And she would never look back.